The fire in the hearth cracked and spat sparks, but it did little to warm her chilled bones. Morning had arrived hours ago, yet the kitchen still smelled of smoke, cinders, and burnt stew. She knelt on the stone floor, hands blackened from ash, scrubbing a pot that no longer seemed worth the effort. Around her, the pack moved like shadows, some laughing, some sneering, but none spared her more than a glance. "Move faster, girl," barked a coarse voice, a young wolf. Shifter stumbled past, stepping on the edge of her apron. "Or you'll be cleaning the stables by nightfall." She gritted her teeth, hiding the flare of anger that rose like a wild flame in her chest. Her wolf stirred, restless, whispering words she could never say aloud. "You are more than this. You are not meant for dirt and derision." But she swallowed the roar of indignation and bent her head lower. Pride was a dangerous thing here, especially for a maid with silver eyes. Pride could get you killed. Still, every so often, she allowed herself the smallest of defiance. A tilt of her chin, a sharper angle of her back, a spark in her gaze that dared anyone to look too closely. Most did not. They saw only a girl bent beneath chores, invisible, easily ignored. The clang of the kitchen door heralded him. Alpha Kale. He moved through the room like a shadow with teeth, his presence enough to make the room freeze. Heads turned instinctively, yet no one dared approach him. No one but her. Her pulse betrayed her, pounding with a mixture of fear and the strange, unwelcome heat that came when his gaze fell upon her. Their eyes met briefly, and the world shifted. Her wolf snarled beneath her ribs, certain, desperate. She looked away quickly, kneeling lower, pretending the ash was all that mattered. Kale did not speak, but his cold gaze lingered, calculating, as if weighing whether the dirt on her hands matched the power in her veins. A scream from the other side of the hall drew his attention away, and the moment passed. Relief and disappointment collided within her chest. She forced herself to keep scrubbing, to keep invisible, to keep her secret buried beneath soot and humility. Yet even as her hands ached, even as her back stiffened, her wolf whispered truths she could not ignore. "You are not nothing. You are fire. One day all of them will bow to the strength you hide." For now she would survive in silence. She would sweep, scrub, and burn herself in ash. But the whisper of destiny pulsed beneath her skin, a rhythm she could not silence. And in the shadows of the kitchen, where the Alpha's cold eyes had fallen, a spark had been struck, a spark that neither time nor toil could extinguish. Her chest still ached from the day's chores, but the pack had no mercy for fatigue. She carried buckets of water through the courtyard, her fingers raw and blistered when the Alpha appeared without warning. Kale moved like a storm, silent and imposing, his presence swallowing the sunlit yard. The air shifted heavy with authority, and with something she could not name but felt deep in her bones, he stopped, eyes locking onto hers. Silver met ice, and for a heartbeat the world fell away. Her wolf stirred violently beneath her ribs, claws scratching at her restraint. "He sees you, he knows, he feels it." She bent her head, trying to hide the flicker of recognition in her eyes, but Kale did not look away. His gaze was sharp, measuring, filled with a cold fire that left her trembling. She wanted to speak, to explain, to run, but her body refused to obey. "Your hands are filthy," he said finally, voice low, precise, not cruel, but commanding, and the single sentence cut through her like a whip. I'll clean them, Alpha," she whispered, lowering the bucket. Her pulse raced and her fingers clenched instinctively. She could feel it, the pull of the mate bond, subtle yet undeniable, threading between them like a live wire. Kale's jaw tightened. "See that you do." His eyes softened for a fleeting second, a dangerous, fleeting spark of recognition, then hardened again. He turned and strode away, leaving her trembling with both fear and desire. Her wolf growled low in her chest, frustrated. "You are meant for him. Do not waste another second hiding." She shook her head, scolding herself. No, he would never claim a maid. He would never see me as anything but... This, her hands covered in grime and labor, felt suddenly too small, too ordinary. The secret of her lineage, of her destiny, pressed against her ribs, desperate to breathe. Across the courtyard, Kale's beta gave her a sidelong glance, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Careful," he said softly. "The Alpha doesn't take kindly to distractions." Distraction, that word settled over her like a weight. Was she nothing more than a nuisance to him, or was there something deeper, hidden beneath that cold, calculating gaze? Her wolf insisted she knew the truth, but the truth was dangerous, and exposure could cost her everything. She lowered her eyes, gripping the bucket as if it were armor. Yet even as she scrubbed the dirt from the courtyard stones, she could not shake the heat of his gaze, nor the sting of denial that laced their brief encounter. And somewhere in the distance, the moon rose, pale and steady, as if watching and waiting for the day when silver eyes would finally meet destiny unafraid. The great hall glittered with candlelight and polished silver, yet it did nothing to warm her trembling heart. She moved through the throng of pack members like a shadow, carrying trays of food while praying that no one noticed the ash still clinging to her apron. Her hands shook, betraying the exhaustion and fear she had carried from the kitchens. Every laugh, every whisper seemed to follow her as she carefully set the platters before the Alpha and his council. The room smelled of roasted meat, wine, and ambition, a heady mix that made her pulse thrum. Then it happened. One of Cale's betas, a tall, smug wolf shifter named Roderick, stepped forward. He had the grace of a predator and the cruelty of a hyena. "Watch your step, Ash, girl," he jeered loudly just as she tripped on the corner of her rug. The tray tipped. Food cascaded across the floor with a clatter that made the hall fall silent. Gasps echoed like thunder. Some stifled laughter. Others simply stared, eyes wide with disbelief. She froze, cheeks burning hotter than the hearth she had spent hours tending. Cale's eyes found hers from across the hall, and for a heartbeat she hoped. No, prayed for intervention, but he did nothing. His jaw tightened, his gaze hard, and though his wolf snarled, his lips remained still. Humiliation coiled in her chest like a living thing. She knelt quickly, gathering the fallen food, and murmured, I'm sorry," though the words felt empty, useless in the torrent of stares. Pathetic. Roderick spat, stepping back with a smirk that promised he would not let this moment fade from memory. "Maybe you should stick to scrubbing floors, Ash. Girl, it suits you." The hall erupted with laughter. She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms, her wolf roaring silently beneath her ribs. She could feel the fire of destiny smoldering there, but it was a flame she dared not release. Not here. Not now. Her gaze flicked back to Cale. His eyes softened briefly, a flicker of recognition, regret, perhaps even longing. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He turned his attention to the council, leaving her exposed, shivering beneath the weight of his silence. She swallowed a sob, straightened her back, and continued gathering the mess. Every whisper, every pointed glance, fueled a silent vow in her heart. She would never bow like this again. Never allow anyone to see her as less than she was, less than the true Luna. And yet, even in her despair, a spark of something dangerous kindled. Her wolf twined with hers, whispering promises of strength and vengeance, of power and reckoning. The laughter continued, echoing off the walls. But she would endure, she would survive, and when the time came, they would all remember her, not as the maid who spilled a tray, but as the Luna who had been hiding in plain sight. Because even in the deepest humiliation, the silver in her eyes refused to dim. Even after the humiliation in the great hall, she moved through the pack's corridors with a careful, measured grace. Her silver eyes, hidden beneath lowered lashes, caught more than she intended, glances, whispers, subtle nods from those who thought no one noticed. Elder Maris, the pack's wise and watchful seer, lingered near the council chambers, his gaze sharp and unsettling. She froze when he stepped closer, his eyes flicking briefly to hers. A faint, almost imperceptible gasp escaped him, and for a moment the air between them pulsed with an unspoken recognition. "Your eyes," he murmured, barely audible, more to himself than to her. They are like hers." Her heart stuttered. No, it cannot be." She kept her face calm, bowed her head, and whispered, "Yes, Elder, just eyes, nothing more." But the seeds of curiosity had been planted. Whispers began to ripple through the pack, quiet at first. Soft exchanges in shadowed corners, glances that lingered too long, questions that were never fully spoken. Some wondered if the ashes in her hair were more than dirt, if the girl who bent over scrubbing floors carried a secret lineage none dared speak aloud. At night, alone in the servants' quarters, she traced her fingers over her silver eyes in the mirror, feeling the pull of something ancient and forbidden. Her wolf murmured beneath her ribs, a low, insistent hum of truth. They suspect, they are close to knowing, you must be careful, and yet danger sharpened her senses. If the pack discovered her identity too soon, the same fate that had struck her family could strike her. She could be killed, or worse, manipulated as a pawn in the political games of rival alphas. She tightened her grip on the broom she held, her knuckles whitening. Even as fear pressed into her chest, there was determination there, a quiet, unyielding flame. She would protect her secret at all costs, even from the alpha whose cold eyes haunted her every thought. But as the whispers grew louder, and the weight of suspicion pressed like stones on her shoulders, one truth became undeniable. Her time in the shadows was limited. The pack was awakening to the possibility that the maid among them was no ordinary servant, and when that truth came, she knew her life would never be the same again. The wind tore through the courtyard that evening, carrying with it the scent of wet stone and pine. She hurried along the cobblestones, balancing a basket of herbs, her skirts whipping around her ankles. The storm had arrived faster than expected, drenching everything in its path. Her foot slipped on the slick stones. A gasp escaped her lips as the basket tilted, spilling fragrant leaves onto the ground. Panic surged, and before she could steady herself, a strong hand closed around her waist, steadying her, Alpha Kale. His eyes, storm, gray and sharp, held her captive. The world seemed to shrink until nothing existed but the feel of him, solid, commanding, impossibly close. Her heart hammered against her ribs, her wolf howling in warning and longing. "You shouldn't run alone," he growled, his voice low, vibrating with a warning she could feel as much as hear. I wasn't," her words faltered. She could not tear her gaze from his. Her wolf, insistent and wild, pulsed in her chest. "You belong to him, he belongs to you." Kale's fingers brushed against her arm, and she shivered. A spark, bright and scorching, leapt between them, igniting a connection she could no longer deny. Her pulse raced, warmth flooding places she hadn't known were empty. She began again, but the words died on her tongue. He leaned slightly closer, as if to read her unspoken thoughts, his breath brushing her hair. "Stay away," he commanded, though his eyes betrayed something far more dangerous. Hunger, desire, the undeniable pull of the mate bond. Her wolf growled, low and warning, but she did not pull back. Instead, she felt herself leaning slightly forward, drawn to him, drawn to the danger in those storm, gray eyes. "I can't," she whispered, barely audible over the storm. I can't stay away." Kale's jaw tightened. He released her abruptly, taking a step back, yet his gaze lingered, heavy with restraint and unspoken confession, if anyone knew. His words trailed off, dangerous and unfinished. She stood there, soaked and trembling, a mixture of longing and fear coiling tightly in her chest. The mate bond burned between them, undeniable, unstoppable, and forbidden. Yet the storm around them felt almost gentle compared to the storm building in their hearts. As he disappeared into the shadows of the pack hall, she felt the touch linger on her skin, a phantom that would haunt her until the next time fate, or destiny, threw them together. Her wolf whimpered softly in the silence. "It has begun, you cannot deny it anymore," and somewhere in the darkened corridors of the pack, Kale's thoughts mirrored her own, taut with longing, warning, and the secret truth neither dared voice aloud. The morning sun glinted off the dew-soaked courtyard, but it did nothing to warm the chill that had settled over her heart. She moved silently, carrying water to the stables, when the sound of heavy boots echoed against the stone walls. A presence entered the yard before she could even lift her gaze. Alpha Darius. He was broad, shouldered, arrogant, and dangerously confident. The rival Alpha who had long coveted power and, apparently, amusement. His eyes found hers immediately, and a smirk tugged at the corners of his mouth. She felt a shiver not of fear, though there was plenty of that, but of something hotter, sharper, a thrill that she could not name. You, he said, his voice cutting through the morning air, are far too intriguing to ignore. He stepped closer, deliberately close, his gaze lingering on her silver eyes. I claim you as my future mate. Consider this a warning and a promise. Her blood ran cold. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, that revealing even a hint of her true identity could cost her life. Her wolf snarled inside her chest, furious, possessive, protective. He is not your mate. He does not belong to you. She bowed her head slightly, forcing her voice steady. I belong to no one, she said softly, but Darius only chuckled, a low, cruel sound that carried across the courtyard. Cale appeared then, silent as the shadows themselves, stepping between them like a living wall. His eyes, storm, gray and impossible, locked onto Darius with deadly intensity. Step back, Cale warned, his voice low and dangerous. She is not yours to claim. Darius laughed, a sharp, cutting sound, not mine. Perhaps she will decide when the time comes, or perhaps. His smirk widened. You will discover that even the strongest alpha cannot command desire. The tension was electric, humming between them, coiling like a living thing. She felt the mate bond thrumming violently inside her, screaming at her to step toward Cale, to stake her claim without words. Her hands shook, and her wolf's growl rumbled deep in her chest. Cale's jaw tightened. Do not touch her. He warned, teeth clenched. His presence alone made the air vibrate, made Darius pause for a heartbeat that seemed to stretch forever. She swallowed, bowing her head, hiding the heat that rushed through her. The danger was clear, the warning undeniable. The pack's politics, rivalries, and desire would not leave her untouched. And now, the very alpha she had longed for, and feared, stood ready to defend her, even if the world burned around them. Her wolf howled softly, echoing the unspoken truth. No one would claim her but the one she was bound to by blood, destiny, and the unyielding pull of the mate bond. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that the games had only just begun. The castle corridors were quiet now, the pack retreating to their quarters after the day's duties. She moved silently, broom in hand, dusting the grand halls she had walked for years yet still felt no claim over. The soft click of her shoes against the stone echoed in the emptiness, masking the rapid thump of her heart. She paused before a carved wooden door she had never noticed, half hidden behind a tapestry. Curiosity, sharp and insistent, prickled at her. The lock was brittle, the door groaning as she pushed it open. Inside, moonlight spilled over a forgotten chest, its surface dusted with decades of neglect. Her breath caught, the metal glinted faintly in the pale light. She knelt, brushing away layers of grime until the lid creaked open. Inside lay a necklace delicate yet regal, a chain of silver, woven like the crescent moon, holding a single pendant shaped like a full moon cradled in claws. She reached out, trembling, and the moment her fingers brushed the pendant, warmth surged through her veins, spreading from her fingertips to her chest, igniting her wolf. Visions flashed before her eyes, whispers of a woman with eyes like hers, a Luna who had ruled with wisdom and courage, falling beneath betrayal and bloodshed. You are the true Luna. A voice echoed in her mind, tender yet commanding. Her mother's voice. You carry the legacy. You carry the strength. Do not let it be stolen again. Tears sprang unbidden. The weight of destiny, long hidden beneath ash and servitude, settled on her shoulders like a cloak of fire. She clasped the necklace to her chest, feeling the pulse of power that had always been hers, now awakened. Somewhere in the stillness of the castle, she sensed a shift. The pack's hierarchy, the alpha, the rival alphas. They would soon feel the tremors of her awakening. Her wolf howled softly, a long, low sound that promised strength, defiance, and vengeance. She swallowed hard, standing taller than she had in years. The maid who had scrubbed floors and hidden in shadows would soon be unrecognizable. The silver in her eyes glimmered with newfound purpose, reflecting the moonlight like liquid fire. And in that reflection, she saw not a servant, but the Lunar reborn, her destiny no longer secret, her power no longer denied. The necklace's warmth pressed against her heart, and she knew that the path ahead would be dangerous but necessary. Every step would lead her closer to her alpha, closer to the bond she could no longer ignore, and closer to the throne that was rightfully hers. Her wolf rumbled in agreement. It is time. The storm had arrived with a fury that matched her racing heart. Rain hammered against the castle walls, wind tearing through the trees outside like a living thing. She ran through the corridors, clutching the Luna's necklace to her chest, desperate to reach safety before the storm swept her into danger. A shout rang out, followed by the crash of splintering wood. Her foot slipped, and for a heartbeat, she was certain she would fall, but a strong hand shot out, catching her mid-step. Alpha Kale. The moment their eyes met, the world narrowed to the space between them. Silver and Storm, Gray collided, and her wolf roared in recognition. Sparks ignited along her spine, a heat that burned through her very soul. The mate bond, long simmering beneath denial, surged like wildfire, dangerous and all-consuming. "Stay close," Kale commanded, his voice low, edged with something she had never heard before. Urgency, fear, and something darker. Do not let go. She wanted to speak, to protest, to remind him that she was just a maid, a shadow among the pack. But the words died as his fingers brushed hers. Electricity seared through her, her pulse hammering, her breath shallow. The world around them, the storm, the castle, the pack, faded, leaving only him, only the bond, only the undeniable truth of their connection. I can't stop it," she whispered, trembling. Her wolf howled in tandem with her heart, demanding, warning, aching. Kale's gaze softened, almost unbearably so. "Neither can I," he admitted, though he stepped back, creating distance that neither of them truly wanted. "But if we give in, everything will change. The pack, our enemies." His jaw tightened, and he shook his head, restraining the pull that had drawn them together. Her chest burned with longing, with frustration, with desire. She wanted to reach for him, to feel his hands on her, to let the bond claim them both. But reason, danger demanded restraint. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his sharp features, his storm. Gray eyes locked onto hers. "We cannot," he growled, though the fire in his gaze betrayed him. Yet even as he turned to shield her from the storm's fury, she could feel it. The bond, searing, alive, unbreakable. It would not be denied. It would not be ignored, and in that moment, drenched in rain and tension, both knew the truth. The fire between them had been lit, and nothing, neither rivals, curses, nor pack politics, could extinguish it. Her wolf growled low, and she whispered to it, to herself, to the storm. "Let it burn." The moon rose full and unforgiving, casting silver light across the pack's courtyard. Shadows stretched long, twisted by the flickering torches that lined the stone walls. She moved cautiously, every sense alert, knowing the tension in the air had grown thicker with each passing hour. Darius's whispers had spread like poison. Allies within the pack, wolves she had once considered neutral, now eyed her with suspicion. Her silver eyes, once hidden, had become a subject of hushed conversation, dangerous knowledge that could cost her life. She paused near the edge of the stables, feeling the cold press against her shoulders. A trap, she realized too late. The footsteps behind her were deliberate, slow, measured. Going somewhere, Luna, Darius's voice dripped with mockery. He stepped from the shadows, flanked by two traitorous shifters, their eyes gleaming with betrayal. "You should have stayed hidden. Now the pack will see the truth, and you will pay." Her wolf growled, claws pressing against her ribs, a low, warning hum that surged through her veins. She wanted to fight, to scream, to call for Kale, but the surprise was absolute and the enemy too close. Then, like a storm breaking over the mountains, Kale appeared. His presence was a wall of shadow and power. He moved faster than thought, striking Darius's flank, forcing the rival Alpha back with sheer force. His storm, gray eyes found hers, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to only them. "Run," he commanded, voice sharp as lightning. "Now, or you'll be caught in this madness." She hesitated, torn between fear and the pull of the mate bond that tugged her toward him. But instinct, sharpened by survival, took over. She sprinted into the darkness, heart hammering, ears straining for the sound of pursuit. Behind her, the sounds of struggle echoed. The clash of claws, the low growl of the pack, the harsh command of an alpha defending what was rightfully his. She could hear Kale's roar, the warning that Darius would not leave unscathed. The betrayal was clear. Even within the walls of the pack, danger lurked in the unlikeliest places. Trust was a weapon, and enemies hid behind familiar faces. Her wolf whimpered, anxious but resolute. She pressed on, heart blazing with a mix of fear, rage, and the undeniable fire of destiny. By the time she reached the safety of the castle's inner sanctum, she knew one truth above all. The world she thought she understood had shifted, and the game of survival and love had only just begun. The blood moon hung high, painting the arena in crimson light. The pack had gathered, their shadows long and tense, every eye fixed on the unfolding duel. The air was thick with anticipation, fear, and the scent of wild power. Cale stood tall, muscles coiled, his storm, gray eyes blazing as he faced Darius across the stone circle. The rival alpha sneered, claws flexing, ready to claim what he believed was rightfully his. She stepped forward, the Luna's necklace resting against her chest, glowing faintly in the moonlight. For the first time in years, she stood not as a maid, but as the rightful Luna, her silver eyes reflecting the fiery red above. The pack murmured, whispers rippling like wind through trees. Darius's gaze fell on her, and a cruel smirk crossed his face. So, the little maid reveals herself at last. He spat. "Do you think your presence changes anything?" Her wolf growled low, and she lifted her chin, meeting his taunt with unwavering fire. "I am the Luna," she said, voice steady and commanding. "And this ends tonight." Cale's eyes softened briefly before sharpening with deadly focus. The alpha's growl rumbled deep in his chest, his wolf surging in resonance with hers. Together, they were unstoppable, bound by fate, power, and the mate bond that had refused to be denied. The fight erupted. Darius lunged, claws flashing, teeth bared, but Cale moved like shadow and steel, countering each strike with precision and controlled fury. Sparks flew where claws met stone, the ground trembling beneath the force of their confrontation. She watched, pulse hammering, wolf roaring in her chest, as Cale pushed himself to the limit. Every strike carried the weight of destiny, every dodge echoed with the memory of betrayal, and every growl was a promise. None would harm her while he drew breath. Then, seizing the moment, she stepped forward, necklace gleaming, channeling the legacy of the true Luna. Her voice rang out clear and commanding. Enough. The power surged through her, silver fire spilling into the arena, catching Darius off guard. He stumbled, claws faltering, eyes widening in shock as the pack sensed the true Luna among them. Cale's final strike sent him sprawling, defeated, the roar of the blood moon echoing their victory. The pack fell silent. And then, one by one, the Alpha's warriors knelt, acknowledging her as their rightful Luna. Cale's storm, gray eyes found hers, and in that gaze, she saw devotion, relief, and the undeniable bond that had pulled them together through every trial. Her wolf howled in triumph, echoing through the stone walls, a promise of reign, love, and unbreakable strength. For the first time in years, she stood not as a servant, not as a shadow, but as the Luna, the queen of the pack and Cale's fated mate.